Okay. And then, so if you have any questions, please submit them through the Zoom Q&A, which is located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be addressing all questions at the end.
Without further ado, let's start off with Jennifer Gerson. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your graduate school experience?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my name is Jennifer Gerson. I'm the Director of Graduate Affairs here in the UCI School of Social Sciences. I've actually been with UCI for nearly 2 years, but I am actually a first-generation college student. I attended the University of Southern California, USC, for my bachelor's, my master's, and my doctorate. I have a doctorate in educational leadership with an emphasis in higher education administration. And I worked at the University of Southern California for 16 years and actually joined UCI right before the pandemic at the end of 2019. And when I actually pursued my master's and my doctorate, I worked full-time while doing both programs. So both of the programs that I participated in which I earned my degrees, I ended up, the programs themselves were geared towards working professionals. So my classes were often in the late afternoon, early evening, which allowed me to work during the day and attend classes in the evening. And then also because I worked at the university at the time, they actually paid for a good chunk of my graduate program, which was a wonderful benefit and really, really appreciated. And so now in my role in social sciences, I work exclusively with our graduate students, our PhDs and our master's students. And it just brings me so much joy to be able to help them along their journey in the program.
How is your graduate school experience like? Like, how are the applications? How is the lifestyle?
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, graduate school is a big commitment, right? Regardless of what program you're doing. Here in social sciences, our PhD programs, our students are expected to be full-time students where they devote all of their time to their PhDs. Some of our programs are 5 years, some are 6. We have one that's 7. But I would say some of my personal experience, my life, some of my closest friends have come out of my graduate programs. Just being able to kind of be in the trenches together and being able to help one another and really just learn from others' experiences has really been tremendous.
I don't know. Is there anything that stood out during your graduate experience? Like, did you do any volunteer work, community work? Were you also like managing jobs?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, I would encourage, everyone who's thinking about graduate school, who's on the Zoom right now, to really get lots of information about the program that you're interested in, talk with current students in the program to learn more. I know for me, because I was a full-time employee while also doing graduate school, it was a little bit different, right, than what a lot of our students are doing right now, for instance, in our PhD program. But I would say a lot of it has to do with time management. So I know that I would often get asked when I was in my graduate program, how do you do it all, right? How do you balance your schoolwork, your responsibilities with your job? And then also I have a family. And so how do you do it? What do you do? And what I would tell everyone, and I tell this to all of our students nowadays as well, is we all have the same number of hours in a day. I don't have more, there are only 24 hours in a day. I don't have any additional hours, but it's all about how you utilize the time that you have. So that's not to say you have to be working 24/7. In fact, you will burn out very quickly if you do that. So I encourage you all, if you're thinking about graduate school, and I'm sure you've heard about students who say, oh, I've only gotten 4 hours of sleep a night and I'm doing great. That is not enough. You need to remember that graduate school is a marathon, okay? So you have to pace yourself and you have to really, really take advantage of self-care. If meditating helps you, go for it. Exercise, sleep, diet, the simple things. But one thing that helped me when I had all of these responsibilities is just making sure that if I had a lot of reading to do and I had a dissertation to write and I had papers to write and there was a lot going on all the time, I made sure I had my readings either with me if they were physical hard copies, or I had the articles, on my laptop ready to go. So even if I had 5 or 10 minutes to just get some reading done, I would do it. And then I'd take some notes and then I'd be ready for class. And that made a world of difference. So sometimes you're not going to have 4 hours set aside to work on something, and that's okay. I would also take my assignments with me or my readings with me if I was, let's say, picking my kids up from their sports or from after school. If I knew I'd have a few minutes to sit and wait for them, I'd bring it with me. And even if it was 5, 10, 15 minutes of getting some readings done or making notes about an article, or remembering, okay, I need to ask my dissertation chair a question, doing that during that time really made a world of difference.
Speaking of workload, how much, how was it? Were there times where you felt overwhelmed? Like with UCI, we're currently like a quarter system, so we're constantly shifting classes every 10 weeks, and we're always being pushed to do so much in such little time. How did going into graduate school affect your workload?
Yeah, I think it again, what I tell students is you cannot make this decision lightly. Okay. So if you're going to go to grad school, you have to be ready to commit. And if it were easy, everyone would do it. But again, the best thing you could do is that self-care that I talked about, and making sure that you are taking care of yourself, but also give yourself the benefit of the doubt too. I think sometimes we tend to be our own harshest critics, and we tend to be really hard on ourselves and say, oh, I'm a failure, or oh, I didn't get this accomplished, or oh, I didn't do that. In the end, you're much harder on yourself than others are. I think especially with a PhD program where you have research to do and a dissertation and you have classes and you're serving as a teaching assistant and you have all of these things going on, the best thing to do is really try to set aside time to take care of yourself, but also set aside time to get everything done, and make sure that you're in communication with your advisor. Make sure that if you're a teaching assistant, get in touch with the instructor of the class that you're teaching. And if there's a question or a problem, ask. It's better to ask and get that information than to assume or think, oh, it's no big deal that I dropped the ball on this, because the instructors are really leaning on the TAs to help them teach the class. And it's a very collaborative environment. And so if a teaching assistant doesn't do something they said they would do, then all of a sudden first of all, we worry, we're thinking, oh my goodness, what happens? Is the student okay? But they're also, leaning on them to get it done. So I would say just being mindful of what you're required to do, be mindful of the tasks that you need to complete. And again, just remember, we all have the same number of hours in a day. So you can definitely get things done. But you also need to schedule that time for your sleep and exercise and things like that. Even for me, now that I'm done with my doctoral program and I'm just working full time, I still try to schedule time. It's very easy to sit at my desk all day and not get outside, right? And not see the beautiful campus and not get a little walk around campus. So sometimes I'll schedule meetings and we'll do walking meetings outside, right? Just to get our steps in, get some sunshine, and that's made a difference for me as well.
Thank you. Before we move on to our next panelist, do you have anything else to say, just like a standout inspirational motivation for students who want to pursue grad school, like anything for them to take away?
Sure. I think, oh, sorry, I'm getting a message here that says my internet is unstable. So I apologize if I end up freezing up here. The joys of Zoom, right? I would say, you know, if you are interested in pursuing grad school, don't let anyone tell you you can't do it. Okay. Don't think, oh, I'm not smart enough, or, oh, I can't. You can do it. You can do it. If you want to do it, go and get it done. Okay. It is possible. And there are lots of folks that are here at UCI that are here to support your efforts. I am one of them. So, you know, if after this call, if anyone has any follow-up questions or concerns, I am happy to answer them. I'm happy to chat over Zoom. You know, let me know. I would say just do it. And the nice thing too is with our PhD programs, we fund our students. And so when I'm done with my portion, when we go on to the next speaker, I'll put in the chat the link to our website. And I will, that way students can kind of look and see what our programs are all about and what's involved. But I would say if you're interested in grad school, go for it.
Thank you, Jennifer. We can move on to our next panelist. So Langu, she could introduce herself and discuss her experience with graduate school so far and extending advice and tips for students who are interested.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Jennifer. Actually, I got a lot of your email from you, and this is the first time to see you in person, in a sense. Yeah, so my name is Lang O, and I am a 6th-year PhD student in sociology. So this will be my last year in the program. So I'm currently in the stage of looking for jobs and stuff. So I can talk up more about that if any of you are interested in it. I am also a SARC graduate school advisor for 6 years as well. So like since I've been starting the program, so I actually work at the SARC Monday from 1 to 5 this quarter. So I help with graduate school applications, going over your statement. I also help some students with the research related proposal as well. So yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Besides me, there are other 2 fantastic graduate advisor as well, Selena and Leo, who is from economic department. So yeah, I actually was a transfer student. I transferred from Pasadena City College to UCI. So I actually finished my undergrad at UC Irvine, and I directly joined the PhD program because of my kind of interest in doing research. But I also considering like going to a master program as well. So when I applied to school, I applied it to a couple of master program as well. But because of I got the PhD offer and you know, and it's fully funded, I decided, you know, just directly go to a PhD program rather than doing a master then PhD. But there are a lot of different options that we kind of can talk about in terms of the application process. For instance, some students might decide to take a gap year and then go into graduate school. That is very common. Some students go directly into a master program, then applying to a PhD program. That is also common. And then there are some students like me join the PhD program directly, and then there are a lot of students in the graduate program like that as well. But then there are differences between master program and then PhD program, and then the type of the training that you will kind of gain. So it depends on what you want in terms of the trajectory. We can talk a lot more about, you know, what you can, what program that essentially you wanted to apply to. I personally was very interested in research. Right now, I'm still interested in research. Even after I'm graduating, I'm looking for jobs in the industry. I'm still looking for research-related jobs. So I want to continue to be able to apply my skills, but in a more kind of non-academic settings. So because of that, that's essentially why I wanted to like join a PhD program, because you do get a lot of practice of doing research on your own or with your peers. While in a master program, you probably will be asked to do one final project, but you will, most of the time you'll be taking a lot of classes. So I would say that's like a major differences in terms of the skill set that you will acquire. And yeah, I realized I didn't talk too much about myself in terms of what I do. So I mean, sociology, I was involved in a lot of different type of projects. I'm like the not typical type where most of the time people focusing on one subject. I actually focus on multiple subjects. throughout my research career. So I've been involved in a lot of family research, demographic research, attitude research, psychological well-being research, a lot of fields. And it's because of my interest in kind of varies. So, and we can talk about that as well in terms of how to decide research topic in graduate school and how to pursue that. But I will stop it right here, and then like you can ask me any questions. Yeah.
So what made you want to continue or choose UCI in the first place? And just
Yeah.
your workload, and
Yeah.
also just being in school for so long, do you feel burnt out? And like, how do you handle that?
Yeah. So I think the reason why I choose UCI is, well, actually so the reason why I choose UCI is because of my undergraduate relationship with one of the professor made me kind of wanted to continue working with him, even though I don't work with him anymore. I'm working with another advisor, but that was initially the reason. And also because I was a graduate student, I technically didn't stay in UCI for too long. So like, it wasn't like, very old environment for me where I need to switch a place to kind of to adjust to it. I liked it, and that's why I decided to kind of continue at UCI. And also, like Jennifer said, all of our PhD program are fully funded. And then what is a lot better about UCI's program is funded for 6 years for PhD program, which a lot of you will find out some of the other schools are only funded for 5 years. So a longer funding do give students more kind of sense of security in terms of, if they wanted to, they can't finish the program in 5 years, they have that extra year to work on their stuff. So that kind of extra year of funding definitely played a crucial role as well. A third reason is just the environment. Like I enjoying the food in the in Irvine and in Orange County, and yeah, I can't just imagine living somewhere don't have that much fun. But yeah, so that's like kind of the three main reasons that I decided to stay at UCI. Yeah.
And then for the other question, like, how did you handle all
Oh,
of you felt
yeah.
like burnt out, if you have experienced that?
Yeah. So personally, I think so. Like I said, I directly from undergrad, I joined the graduate school, and I just wanted to push it through, right? Because I tend to find out if you start working and once you earn, have a paid job, it will be a little bit harder to come back to school because of the pay and the time differences. But for me, I just decided to push it through because I feel like I might still have the momentum to go through that. Uh, I don't think it was burned out because of the school life. I do think the challenge to think a little bit is the financial aspect of it. You will be paid working as a TA or research assistant while being a graduate student, but your pay is not like a lot, right? So thinking about like, I'm almost 28 now, and at age 28, thinking about how much you earn and thinking about how much your peers you earn, it might give you some kind of anxieties. But after you graduate, you can get a job and you can get paid well. So, but you do have to kind of think about leaving for 5 years with a not too high of a pay, I would say. So like that's kind of the leaving the financial aspect of it. But with burnout, I do think it varies by students. Personally, I don't believe I'm like burnout a lot or feeling burnout all the time. I have like kind of like a like I have my way to manage it. And then besides, I'm not taking classes anymore. You're only taking classes during the first 2 years. Right now, I'm only doing my own research. So I had a lot of time that I schedule and I can pace myself. But then I do understand there are different programs, right? Like maybe in STEAM programs, sometimes people would need to work with the lab. They have to go to the lab in the middle of the night, and then they are definitely more burned out than I am, where I have more control over my time. So it definitely varies, but under the School of Social Science, I think like students tend to have more control over their time compared to other students who need to work in a lab setting and constantly to go back and check and stuff like that.
Thank you. And before we move on to our next panelist, just last question for you. Is there anything you wish you knew before going to your PhD program that you would want other students to know about?
Yeah, I think the things, I don't know, I feel like a lot of students might think about, or at least my cohort mates who are going to PhD program, right? They're very kind of, a lot of them are committed to pursuing a academic position or research career and like that. But I would say there are a lot of non-academic options that is available to a lot of students. So don't feel like you can't switch back to like kind of non-academic jobs, right? And then looking for kind of classes that can support you to find non-academic jobs in the future when once you join the PhD program, right? There are a lot of courses that you can take. You are, I mean, with the like tuition paid by the school, you can even take a lot of like fun classes at the undergrad level. I have friends who are taking Japanese with all of the undergraduate students, you know, taking advantage of that, and then to prepare yourself for the job market. And I think it's something I just recent 2 years been thinking about, but I feel like people can think about it a little bit beforehand that as well. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Lingu.
Yeah.
We have Jasmine. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your current graduate school experience?
Hi, my name is Jasmine Garcia. I am, sorry, am I coming in okay? My screen froze for a minute. Okay. I'm a first generation Latina, and the first in my family to go to a UC. So, you know, finding out that I was going to UCI was a huge deal. And especially being a transfer student, you know, all of it, it goes by so fast. So during that whole process, I actually just applied to Pepperdine because I was rushing myself, and I think that was my biggest issue or current concern was that I wish, you know, how Jennifer had mentioned, that I spent more time looking into other programs and seeing what was the best option for me. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the program I'm in. It's the Master's of Science in Leadership in Higher Education. So, and in my current role, you know, I'm in administration here at UCI. So it just so happened to work out beautifully, and I love it. But like I said, I do wish I did spend more time to just check out those programs, see what the tuition was, see what the curriculum was, what the timeline was, you know, just informing myself a lot more. And I guess, you know, just putting a little bit more ease on my own conscience that like, you don't have to rush through these things, you know, like make those educated decisions, like just trying to figure out, you know, what your best option is and what your interests are, you know, because like same thing for me, like I don't feel a burnout, you know, I love school. Like I've been, you know, I attended community college for 5, 6, 7 years, you know, and then I transferred here, and you know, like that's the other thing too, you know, you can't look at it like, oh yeah, you know, oh, I've been here for so long, or I'm getting so old, or you know, all the, you know, you're wasting so much time. You can't look at it that way. Like as long as you keep pushing forward and making those connections, and especially networking, like I can't stress enough how important that is. You know, like being this first generation, I didn't have anyone to tell me, hey, you know, go talk to these people, you know, and even you can attend all these things, you know, try to get as much information. And it feels like, especially at UCI, everyone just kept telling you, you know, oh, get into research, oh, do this, do that, do that. And it's like, this is my first time. What are you talking about? How do I even approach someone, you know, especially a professor, when you feel like, oh my goodness, you know, I don't know anything. You can't have that mentality. Like, honestly, all it really is just expressing your interest and letting people know who you are, you know, that you are interested, you want to move forward, you know, and like even just asking for general advice, you know, you don't know where those connections will help you, you know, in the future. Yeah, I don't know what else I'm kind of missing there. If you guys want to add something else, or yeah.
Well, Jasmine, I know we both met each other when your first year as a transfer at UCI, and I was a sophomore. And we actually had 2 quarters together before the pandemic started. I just want to know personally, how has the pandemic affected your perception to grad school? Because for me, going through that whole year of online schooling, it made me take a step back and see that schooling, like grad school, is always going to be there. So I just want to know, how are you dealing with the idea of, oh, I'm graduating this year, I need to find where I'm going, you know, like how did you deal with that?
Yeah, that definitely was a concern of mine when I was applying to grad school. Like I said, I was debating on taking that gap year, but at the same time, I didn't want to stop, you know. And I literally just tried it. I figured, well, what's the worst that can happen? You don't know until you try. And honestly, when I attended the info session for Pepperdine, I realized that cohort and the environment that was provided there, it was something that I did want to be a part of. And honestly, that's what really triggered me. I was just like, you know what? I can see myself in this. And if I want to pursue this educational route, or like in my professional life, I think this is a good route for me. So, and I did get that good feeling because once we started um, the program, they told us that we have one live weekend during each semester. And that first weekend that we met together in person, it was phenomenal, and everything still translated the same way. I think because we have been in the pandemic for this time period, it has everyone has been able to, be how they are. Everyone's a little bit more comfortable through Zoom, and we are actually, able to communicate properly. So when we did meet in person, it translated the same way. And it was, or actually it was just even emphasized even more because we were in person and everyone's so excited. And, so it's just, and that's my program now. How are we dealing with these things now? How is education and technology coming together? And honestly, I think they're going hand in hand. They're going to be. That's the future. There's no other way around it. But yeah, honestly, I think overall it's gotten progressively better.
Thank you so much. Just one last question before we move on to our next panelist. So what would you tell our attendees right now who are who are going to be in your position of like rushing to get everything together for graduate school? What would you say to them?
Once again, just making sure you get all the information you need. That I can't tell you how easy it was, now taking that step back and actually realizing and looking at the timelines, like majority, 80-90% of the information you need, it's out there. And even if you can't find it, there's someone you can reach to find exactly what you're looking for. And the other thing too is just network. Talk to people, even if it's just your own cohort, like, your peers, and you don't know who they know, and I mean, I'm sure you remember, Michael, like I tried talking to everybody, I tried getting people together because the one little phrase or saying can trigger something else, and the possibilities are endless. So yeah, I think that just leave it at that.
Thank you, Jasmine. Next up, we have our last panelist, Florencia. She could go over her history with graduate school, introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Florencia. Thank you for having me here at today's panel. I am a current first-year grad student at Cal State Long Beach. I'm pursuing my master's in counseling, option in student development in higher education. I'll kind of backtrack a little bit from there, talk about my story a little bit more to give you a little bit of context of who I am. So I began my higher ed journey at community college. I went to Mount San Antonio Community College, Mount SAC. If you are local, you might be familiar with it. I, at the time, thought that I wanted to go to law school. And so I enrolled as a political science major. And the reason why I began at community college was because I had applied to a lot of different schools that I was interested in. And to be honest, the school that I ended up getting into of my options was not a program that I was totally satisfied with. So I had given like my deposit and everything. I was like, okay, like I guess reluctantly I'll have to go. Changed my mind, went to community college, and it worked out really well for me. I was able to transfer to UC Berkeley, and I graduated in 2019. I was a rhetoric major, and I minored in education. While I was a student at Berkeley, I was a peer advocate at the Transfer Student Center. And so that's kind of where I really developed my passion for, my identifying like what I want to do with my career. Like I said, at the time, I thought that I wanted to go to law school. I took one class that was for my rhetoric program, which was called Rhetoric Legal Philosophy. Was not for me. That was like one of my least favorite classes. And so after that moment, I realized like, okay, maybe the legal path isn't for me. Through my work as a peer advocate at the Transfer Student Center, I realized that's what I wanted to do. And yeah, so after graduating, I moved back to Southern California because I wanted to be around my family. It was really hard on me to be away from them while I was in the Bay. And so I moved back. I took 2 years in between my bachelor's and starting my master's. So I took 1 year off where I totally said, I'm not thinking about grad school. I'm just going to work. I worked in K through 12. I worked at an elementary school. I also worked at the district office level throughout that time. And I realized I still wanted to work in education, but I really was passionate about working with adults. So that's how I knew I wanted to work in higher ed versus like K through 12, right? So then what happened was I wanted to take some classes to make myself more competitive for grad school apps, right? So I said, I'm going to go back to my community college. I loved it when I was a student there, so I'm going to go back. So I scheduled a meeting with my counselor or a counselor at the community college. And I said, hey, I'm a grad, or I already graduated, but I want to, take some classes to continue exploring my interests and make myself a competitive grad school applicant. And he said, okay, well, what do you want to do? We talked about it. And basically from there, he recommended the program that I ended up applying to, student development and higher ed at Cal State Long Beach. So I ended up applying, got into the program. The reason why I chose this program over other potential options was for a few reasons. First, affordability is very important for me. And I think it's something you should definitely consider. I know a couple of the other panelists have mentioned that's something to think about. So affordability was an important factor for me. And the other thing was that I knew that I wanted to get my master's in counseling, but I also wanted to walk the line between administration and counseling. I care about both areas, and I didn't want to limit myself. If I didn't have that MS in counseling, I couldn't be, say, like a community college counselor or a counselor at a 4-year. You need to have that MS in counseling, but I also wanted to be knowledgeable and skilled, around higher ed administration issues. So that's why I chose that program. I had heard great things about it from the counselor who recommended it to me, did my research. Yeah, I would say at this time, like if you're thinking about going to grad school, definitely, like Jasmine mentioned, do your research, consider a lot of different factors, including location, affordability, program offerings. When I was looking into my program at Cal State Long Beach, they offered kind of like a map for the classes that you would take over the course of the program. So that helped me a lot in my decision. And I attended info sessions as well. That really helped me. I was able to attend virtual info sessions for my grad program. And in the meanwhile, since I had my mind thinking about grad school, as a current undergrad student, I would recommend maintain those connections with your professors, with anybody that you've worked with anybody that could be there down the line to offer you advice and or a letter of recommendation. I know a lot of the times that can be the scariest part of the application somehow. But yeah, definitely maintain those connections, do your research on the programs that you're thinking about, attend info sessions, get on the phone with somebody who represents the school or the program and see, like what is the best way for me to get more information and connect with somebody who can give me a taste for what this program is about. Yeah, that's a little bit about my story and what I do. I'm a first-year grad student, and at this time, I am also a Cynthia Johnson Fellow at Cal State Long Beach. So basically, it's a fellowship. I do research with our department coordinator. So I'm currently helping him on a research project. I'm going to be honest, going into grad school, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this research thing. Like, I just want to get my MS in counseling so that I can be like, have the job that I want to have. But I'm actually surprised at how much I've like grown in my skills and also learned to enjoy it a little bit along the way too. So that's important too. Somebody mentioned earlier, like it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. I definitely agree. Making sure that you take care of yourself, think about not only how can I complete my degree, but also how can I complete it well, like in one piece, and develop meaningful connections along the way. Like Jasmine mentioned, I think that networking is everything. That's another reason why I chose my program, was because we follow cohort system as well. And so you get to really build those relationships with your peers. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, my advice. I don't know if there's any other questions.
Thank you, Florencia. And considering how you're a first year student for this year, has your experience been what you expected? Was it online because of COVID and everything?
Yeah, we are fully online still. Next semester will be my first time going on campus 1 day a week. Our classes are in the evenings, 2 days a week, but we have them like back to back. So those 2 nights of the week can be like long nights, especially after like a day of work, to be entirely honest, but it's not impossible, right? You just have to plan accordingly. And, when you're like interested in the program that you're doing, you bring a little extra level of commitment to it, right? So even when it gets hard, you push through because you're interested and you know that it's what you want to do. But yeah, so we are fully online at the moment. I think I've still been able to connect with everybody in my program okay, but yeah, that's what that looks like now.
And since you said you also do research, do you also have time to work for a job while also going to school? If you do, like, how do you manage all of that and plan everything through? And if there's any advice you'd like to give to students who also want to do the same thing?
Yeah, so I do have a job on top of being a student and my fellowship. So basically, when I applied for the program, I also applied for the fellowship, interviewed for the fellowship, and then I found out that I had been selected. So that provided me a scholarship. So that does give me a little bit of funding on top of grants and other, financial aid. So I get a little bit of money from there. And then I also work up to 20 hours a week for CalSOAP, which is stands for California Student Opportunity and Access Program. Basically, I'm a college advisor at a high school in Norwalk. And so I get to meet with students, high school students, and like coach them through applications or like career exploration, things like that. So my fellowship is 20 hours a week, plus my job is 20 hours a week. So combined, I work full time and I'm a full-time student. Most of my cohort mates are also full-time employees as well as students. A couple of them have kids. It can be a lot to manage at times, which is again why it's important to pace yourself. Like was mentioned earlier, think about the long term. You got to finish the program well, take care of yourself. Before being a grad student, I always turn in all my assignments on time. I always tried my hardest to be like the best student that I could be. I'm going to be honest, like the adjustment to grad school can be a challenge. And so you need to find those support networks. And sometimes that means if an extension is offered, you take an extension on an assignment. Sometimes it means like you're not going to complete all the readings and you just have to get used to kind of the level of stress, which can sometimes it can feel like a lot. But I think that if you reach out for support with your peers and remind yourself that, school is not your whole life, it's one component of your life, I think that helps a lot.
Thank you so much, Florencia, for sharing your grad school experience. So now for the next 15 minutes, we're going to move on to the Q&A. We actually had got pre-submitted questions when you guys registered. But if you have any questions that haven't been covered yet, please feel free to drop it in the chat. So my first question is, anyone can answer, but can you discuss resources for finding funding for grad school? Yeah.
I'm happy to jump in with this one. So I think, as I mentioned here in the UCI School of Social Sciences, we fund all of our PhD students. So you don't need to apply for extra funding when you apply. If you're admitted to the PhD, you will be funded. But as one of our students mentioned, the funding, there's not a lot of funding, right? So you're not living some extravagant lifestyle where you're traveling all over the place, right? You'll have your needs met. But that being said, most PhD programs do provide funding just like this, right? Where you would get a stipend, you would get your grad student health insurance plan, you would get your tuition and fees covered. However, there is lots of funding available. And in fact, I put the link to our website in the chat, which hopefully our participants can see. But if you go onto our website, you'll be able to see we have a section called funding, and it shows funding within UCI and funding outside of UCI. And if you click on the link that says funding outside of UCI, there is a lot of great information there that is applicable whether you're a PhD student here or elsewhere. So we definitely encourage students to apply for that external funding. We have lots of students who will come in with the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship or the Ford Foundation Fellowship. And those fellowships often will provide more money than you would get if you were just serving as a teaching assistant or, something along those lines. So, but there are lots and lots of funding opportunities, but you do have to seek them out.
Thank you. Our next question is, did you apply with the help of an academic program, or did you mainly apply by yourself? And then to further add on to that, how does the admittance process look?
So when I was undergrad at UCI, I actually worked with SARC for my application. Patrick actually reviewed my application before, and there was another graduate advisor before me reviewed my application. So I did seek out for help at school, and I believe our school has a lot of resources like this can help you go over your application material. In terms of the admission process, so it depends on when you apply, right? So for PhD programs, sometimes the deadline is December, January, or February, pretty early, and then they will get your application and review it. Sometimes you will find, if it's December, right, like a UCI, sometimes you will find out like early results like January or like beginning of February, and sometimes you will be placed on waiting list. What that means is that like by April or something, if the previous admitted student decide to not take the offer, they will extend an offer to you. So it will go, I would think about like April, but for master program, it might be a little bit different. Some of the deadlines, application deadlines are pretty late. So it can be going to winter or spring quarter. Some of them are on a rolling basis, even extended to the summer. So if it's extended to the summer, they will probably let you know a month or two before the school starts. So it all vary based on the school and the program. But there is a website called the Grad Cafe. Sometimes people update their admission results, so you can see people apply the same program, same school. If somebody start to get the results, that means they start to send in the results. Like I rely on that website a lot when I apply to school, just to know where I am at. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can also share, because my experience was a little bit different. I worked on my application, well, mine is a master's program, so probably varies a lot from PhD programs, right? But for my program, I worked on the applications on my own. They were due in December, and then following applications, I believe that they go from, the big pool of applicants narrow, and then have an interview process. And so in that interview, I met with a couple faculty and also current student. And from there, they narrow to the admitted cohort. So my application process looked a little bit different, probably because of the school, and also it was a master's, not PhD.
Thank you. And for our next question, we have, how do you choose, or how to research/choose a good grad school? If anyone has advice about this?
I can talk about that, and I believe I don't know if you get start still have the template. So what I did when I applied to school is I created an Excel list. So there are several ways you can approach what is the best school in terms of like what's the best school for you. Depends on what you wanted, right? So I am an international student, so I didn't really care about the location in a sense because I will be far away from home no matter what. So if some of you do care about the location, right? Some of the students identify in California, then that will be the main area you look for if that location is one of the big requirement. But I did rely on like the newsletter ranking for different school for graduate program because I wanted to like school ranking is very important to me because I think you will show how much of the funding the school can have, how much of support that I can get, how much recognition my degree will gain from that school. So I rely a lot on looking at the ranking. So once I find that, I will select a couple. So you will have a list, right? And then from the say top 50, I will pick some of the based on location or based on the faculty there. So the thing is, I'm not sure about, yeah. So like for instance, even with master program, PhD program is the same. If they say psychology program, right, there are different types of psychology program. Some of the school focusing on child development, some of the school might focusing on other neuropsychology, right, which is totally different. So you have to look into the school and see if what they research on fits what you do. So that's the second step for me. Once I narrow that down, probably be like about 20 school, and then I choose location. I looking at their funding. I looking at whether my GPA or my grades can fit with that. Then I decided my school. So I would say about 10, applying to 10 school will be the average number that you should apply, and then pick like 3 school that's in the top, 3 school, or 4 school that around your range in terms of application material, and 3 school as a kind of like a backup school. So that will be like a good amount in terms of application. And that's how I located that. And I have a spreadsheet and then listed all that to fit what fits my interest. So that is my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd also like to add, I think I agree with everything that you've said. That's right on, and that's so thorough. But I think also, looking at what do you hope to get out of the program? What do you want to do right down the line? And so, for instance, when I was applying for a master's program, I knew that I was going to continue to work full time. So that immediately narrowed my options, right? Because there are many master's programs where you cannot work full time and you have to be a full-time student. And so I knew for me, okay, here are my options. And then same with my doctorate. I pursued an EDD, which is a doctorate in educational leadership. And traditionally, many EDD programs allow students to work full-time, right, while pursuing that. Whereas a PhD traditionally, and I'm generalizing because there are always exceptions, but a PhD, you often have to be a full-time student. And so just knowing that going in, but also, as I mentioned earlier, talking with students that are currently in the program, right, to get a feel for how has their experience been and what have they gotten out of it. For me, before I did my master's and my doctorate, I talked with people who were in the program. I knew where there maybe were challenges, right, where things weren't necessarily the best, but that didn't dissuade me from applying because I knew that there were certain changes that had been made, and I knew that earning those degrees would help me get to where I wanted to be in my profession.
That's what I was gonna add too. On top of everything that you guys mentioned, one thing I like to do too is if you're interested in a certain career, look to see what their requirements are. If they only want a master's degree or if they prefer a PhD, like that'll, give you at least just a rough estimate of like, okay, I should be looking for this, or this is what this type of program that, I should get into, but obviously you wouldn't want to limit yourself, because I do want to get into, counseling and, at the community college, most of them prefer the masters, but yeah, I kind of like to think about that too, because not everyone wants to, stay in school or just keep doing research, you gotta kind of look outside that scope as well.
And then for our next question, what did a typical day in your life look like while handling the pressures of graduate school? For anybody.
I can jump in really quickly. For me, again, since I was working full time and I've got 2 kids, while doing all this, I made it a point to wake up early every day and work on my schoolwork, whether it was reading, whether it was writing, whatever it was, I would do that early. And for me, it was morning. I had colleagues and friends in the program who would stay up late, right? And do it that way. So everyone has to kind of find what schedule works for them. But for me, I would do that every day. I would get up really early and work on that. And then I'd have a few hours of uninterrupted time. And then eventually my family, my kids would get up, and then it was okay, time to get them off to school. And then I had to go to work. But that's what I would do. And as I mentioned earlier, I would have everything with me. So if I had a few minutes during my day to get some reading done or take some notes or what have you, then I could do it then.
Yeah, I'll say for myself and speaking with my classmates, our schedules change like week to week, although some things may stay the same. For example, like work schedules that are set in our firm. For myself, managing both roles in school, I try to kind of block out my time. So for instance, I know that some days I only have work and some days I have school and work. So I kind of try to chunk out my time. And on the days that I don't, I prioritize every class first and I make my schedule around that. So I know, my class days are going to be some longer days because I also have work that day. But then I also have some days where I just only work on my fellowship. And those are more relaxed days where I get to work from home. If I need to like run any errands, I can, schedule meetings and stuff like around that and things like that. So I would say every week is different for myself and every day is different. You have to reevaluate your priorities.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think this is the first time that I really sat down and consistently wrote, in my calendar week, okay, like for Sunday for sure, like, okay, I need to write down what assignments are due this week, especially working full time. Like, and luckily with my program, the first day of the semester, they give us everything. So the next 16 weeks, we know exactly when our assignments are due. We know exactly, when everything's due. So I think that's the nice part. But yeah, definitely like it'll make you reevaluate, what's worth your time and energy, and even like what was mentioned before, just exercising, like that helps so much, like I think my favorite thing is like, if a body's in motion, it'll stay in motion. And that's the same thing for your mind, like as long as you keep having everything going, like it'll fall into place. It might seem like a lot, but once you get into it, it gets easier.
So I know we have short on time, but if any of the panelists would like to stay and answer a couple more questions from the students, that would be great. I just want to know.
Yeah, I can stay for another 5 minutes.
I could stay a little bit longer as well.
Okay, so this last question that was a pre-submitted question was, how do you guys set time to practice self-care since graduate school is different from being an undergrad student?
So for me, I do take advantage of the insurance that was paid by the school. So I have, even with no like stuff, I do talk to a psychiatrist once in a while, like just to talk to someone. It definitely helps. And I think going exercise is another thing. So like practicing those things is definitely a way to dealing with stress. But sometimes like you can't prevent stress. Stress is gonna come no matter what. It's just like how you handle it when it comes, and that when your stresses come, you can deal with it. So that's like a lot of times that happens. Like when I'm dealing with like right now, looking like in the job market, there's like a lot of stress every day where I can't fall asleep. So I will know, what kind of activity I can engage so I can fall asleep better during the night. So those are a couple of ways to to deal with it. And I believe no matter it's a master program or PhD program, take advantage of the school insurance, and then the students insurance are really like great, and then take advantage of that and then seek out for outside help as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll agree with everything that was just said. I think for myself, I noticed that after I became a grad student, I started working out like for stress relief, not because I was like looking for some gains or like anything like that. Like, I think after I became a grad student, I was like, okay, if I can squeeze out a workout 3 times a week, like my head is clear. So definitely making time for that whenever possible helps. For myself, I also try as hard as I can. It's not possible every week by any means, but as hard as I can to get as much work done Monday through Friday, because I have family relationships, and I have like my partner, and I have other things which are equally important priorities to me. So I try my best to manage my work as much as I can Monday through Friday. If I need to stay up late on Friday, that's okay. Saturday, I sleep in, I hang out with my family. For me, that's a big source of support, and it's really important to me, and I feel refreshed when I'm able to do that.
I was gonna say, on top of all that, yes, I know it seems like you just keep piling more, like, oh, how are you supposed to do all that? I think it's important too to just even doing things that you enjoy, like maybe even if it's like an episode on Netflix, like, or 10 minutes playing a video game, like that's okay. Like we're all human, like I don't want to say like look at it as like, oh, you can reward yourself. Like I guess you can, but at the same time, it's like you're allowed to appreciate those things that make you happy, like obviously everyone's always like exercise, do this, but it's not always like physically straining. It doesn't have to be, for you like, oh, this is like stress relief or whatever. Like, no, actually do stuff that you enjoy, that doesn't mean that you have to completely get rid of your old lifestyle. Like you can still do those things.
Thank you, everyone. So if we don't have any more questions, it looks like that's all the time we have for now. And thank you once again for joining us today. A special thanks to all our panelists for partnering with us at SARC.
The Social Sciences Academic Resource Center is available to support your academic endeavors. Schedule a consultation with us today about your postgraduate goals. We can advise you more about grad school, internships, research, and much more. For information, visit the link in the chat. It's on the next slide, Cat. So thank you once again. Thank you so much for our panelists, and take care.
Thank you.